My name is Dr. Peggy Oti Boateng. I'm the Executive Director of the African Academy of Sciences. But before that, I was the Director for Science Policy and Capacity Building of in UNESCO Paris. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It's a very crucial area. And most of the time, we talk about STEM, but we don't talk about the engineering, the E. Very important. We also don't talk about the mathematics because those are fundamentals to either innovation or even critical thinking. But most of the time we just say STEM for just STEM's sake. But before you get into STEM, you also need the fundamentals of physics, chemistry, biology, and mathematics. But a lot of times I see that this generation of young people don't like STEM or STEM subject. It's just because the way it is taught. So we need to have teachers, we need to train teachers to teach science subjects so that they can demystify science and make students more interested in science. Science is application. So we also have to create opportunities for students to experiment and think out of the box, work together and solve, solutions. Also look for solutions to challenges. So this is what STEM, it's all about. There's so much opportunity. You standing there, you're a human object. You are a biological object. And the more you understand and appreciate science, you understand your body better. So that also helps with disease prevention, not only the curation, but also disease prevention. So we should be able to let people appreciate science, that even them, they are a biological, a biological object, that has to be studied. When you talk about industry, you cannot have industry without engineering. We need to have the different type of engineers. You have to have the mechanical engineers, the electrical engineers, and also the chemical engineers. Even if, in terms of even food production, you need this kind of engineers. But there are other new areas. Well, maybe now it's not that new, but you also have biomedical engineering. Where you produce, equipment, biological equipment. That's also another budding area. Now I think we've come far to have those people, a number of them. But the new area now, which Africa doesn't have many people, is computer science and artificial intelligence. To do AI, you need the fundamentals of mathematics. You need the fundamentals of computational science. So, and this is what we're not teaching. We're just consuming, saying AI without, putting anything out there. So these are great opportunity for young people to start, studying in this area so that we can leapfrog and make sure that Africa doesn't continue being consumers of technology, but rather producers of the technology. And when you come into innovation, you also need to have what we call from the lab to market. And that's a value chain. But as most researchers, they don't think about out of the lab to market. But I think we really must train young people to have a holistic view of science, technology, innovation. That you start with the fundamentals, but there is something else at the end, which is innovation, the application of what you are doing in the science. So there's a whole lot that we have to do. And I come to the fundamentals of teaching science, the curriculum of teaching science. You also need dedicated teachers who understand. You need infrastructure, you need a laboratory, so that students will experiment. And it's from there that, we can have, create the interest. You can hands-on, coding, be able to do that. We need to make science interesting. Gone were the days when we even in my science, as a primary school pupil, we all had gardens where we grow the seed, and you went every day to find out what has grown. That's how we learned about cotyledons or photosynthesis. So it was practical, and these were children. We all had our little birds, and you study it. So we have to make science practical. Yeah, take people to experiment. Maybe Abuja, you may not have the oceans, but you have rocks. How many students are taken to go and study rocks, rock formation? There are different forms of rock formation, and they can pick the rock and you come and analyze. So you need the basics of that before you go into, let's say, genomics and bioinformatics, which is now the in thing. But we need those practical, hands-on teaching of science so that we can get more children interested in science. But when they're also in the science, you also have to learn to maintain them, in a career, to enhance, help them with a career path. I know of many engineers who are trained. Where do they go? There are no jobs. Where do they go? They go into banks, because the banks need people who are computational. They need the mathematics. So you lose the engineers there. So what do we have to do? We have to create the enabling environment, for young engineers to be able, to remain in engineering. But I used to tell my engineering students, as an engineer, you have to create those jobs. Again, entrepreneurship. So a lot of the things we have to do with entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship comes with creativity. So that's what it is. So there's a whole lot. So I keep saying STEM needs to be looked at as a value chain. The fundamentals and its application and how it can transform life. There were 5 girls and 2 boys. And I owe it to my father. There was no distinction between boys and girls. We went to school equal. He says education is yours. So, but I was fortunate enough to have my daddy, who was a teacher. So he taught, and he told us, Gary, that the sky was the limit. And I'm happy I went to a girls' school, girls' primary, girls' secondary, girls' A-level. There was no distinction. We were taught that girls can do anything. So as you start at science, we did science. And we had very good teachers who really make us enjoy science. That was the experience. I was telling you, primary school, we were taught science. So the whole curriculum of the science, we did that. And then, to university, I was lucky I had very good teachers as well in sixth form. I remember Dr. Miller, who taught us, chemistry, and he really made chemistry practical, and even physics. I remember Mr. Nyaku, he taught us physics, and we understood physics even as girls. Experiment. So that's, how we got interested in science, then maintained in science. Then went to high school, university, where I did biochemistry. And I love structures. I want to build things, pull them apart, build, and that's structure. That's biochemistry. You have to understand the structures. And for me, it was a whole new world, to build and unbuild. So that's how, I became, biochemist. And then, my postgraduate degree, I decided to go into food technology, food borders on engineering. So I had to do, with engineering. And that's how, engineering, innovation, my PhD, and also that's how I came about. But I also enjoy policy. Scientists don't go into politics. I don't say politics. I say policies. That is decision making. How do you use evidence-based information to make decisions? And I got very interested in that. So I was interested in science, technology, and innovation policy. And we, even started West Africa, a group of science, technology, innovation, policy, analysis, which in fact, one of my contemporary is Rama, Kevin Rama, there. So that's how we build, because we said we are scientists, we should be able to use evidence to inform policy. So that's how, I got it. I was very curious in using that. So from academia, then I got to the United Nations, UNESCO, where I was the regional science program specialist, advisor for Africa. So I led the science agenda for Africa. So we actually worked with African Union to develop TSEC 2024 because of my science and my policy. I understood what it was. So we also really run program for young people in policy decision making. So again, a lot of those programs. And then from there, having worked in Africa, my first duty station was in Nairobi. The second duty station was in Zimbabwe. And then I got promoted as the Director for Science Policy and Capacity Building. And I'm proud to say one of the few first African women was sent to that position. And then, I retired. And having retired, then, I was, is this source or, got into the African Academy of Sciences because I thought there's so much I've learned from Africa and there's so much I've learned globally. For the global agenda, I developed a global agenda for science, technology, innovation, the 8-year, strategic plan for global science. So when I retired, I thought there's so much that I have to do back to Africa. That's where became AES. So this meeting culminates. So you can see my journey. How do we make sure that we bring scientists together to rethink science? And this was the basis of the concept of this program you see today. And I'm happy to see that it's going on well, but there's a lot that we need to do. If you can see, there's a whole lot of attrition. Many of the people you see, I'm sure, are over 60 years. Where is the middle level? Where are the young people? So I think the next stage, how do we create the platform to bring in these young people, to share ideas, to mentor them, to tell our story, where have we been to? Because for a woman scientist, it's not easy. And even a woman scientist in Africa is not easy. And for a woman scientist in leadership positions, it's not easy. But we need those mentors. We need to impart the knowledge on others. So that's, again, we'll continue to do that so that we can enhance people, excellent, and at the same time creating those partnerships that will make really, really, really science work for the African